What's up, guys? And today we're going to talk about collision, okay? And in particular, we're going to go over the Area2D node. And basically, how I think of the Area2D node is I consider it to be something like a trigger, where you don't need to interact with physics. It's not a wall that you're going to run into where the player collides with it and stops. It's just something that your player or something can pass over and trigger an event. Right, so maybe you walk into a house and it triggers a menu, or you teleport somewhere when you walk over it. It could be an area of the map where you walk over this Area2D collision trigger and it triggers music. So that's what we're going to work on today, and we're just going to have fun. We're going to play around with this and see what we come up with. So we're going to swing over here to the documentation, and you can see that it says basically it detects collision with other objects, right? It is basically a region of 2D space in your game that can detect whether something or not moves into or out of it, okay? And there's other things you can do as well, but we're going to focus on that. So you can read this documentation, and I would actually encourage you to read the documentation. I can leave a link in the description to this as well. So let's go back and let's start with an empty project like we always do. I always like to start with an empty project because this is a beginner's channel for Godot. So the more we all do this together, the more repetition we get, the more we remember things, and the better we get at understanding things, okay? So starting off with a blank screen or a blank scene, we're going to go up to 2D scene, and we want to start with a world. We need a world to put everything into. So with it highlighted, I just hit enter, and I'm going to call it world. And inside this world, we know we're going to need a player, right? So since we're focusing on Area2D, let's make this an Area2D node. And some things we need inside this Area2D node are sprite, we will need, and click on the Area2D, and we will also need a collision shape 2D. Let's go and highlight the sprite 2D, and we're going to drag over here to where it says texture empty. We're going to take this icon that everybody should have, and we're just going to drag and drop it into this little box here. That gives us our texture, okay? It's associating this icon now with the sprite. That's our sprite. That's our player. And I guess we should go ahead and click on this and name this player, right? So we all know what it is. And I like to name everything. We're going to call this player. Let's do lowercase. No, let's do uppercase. Player image, right? Player image. And we can leave collision shape the way it is. Now, it's got an error because it wants to know what type of shape should this collision be. And so click on empty, and we're just going to choose new rectangle shape and zoom in. And I'm going to hold down Option, and I think it's Alt maybe on a Windows machine. I'm going to hold down Option, and I'm going to hold this little red dot here, and I'm going to expand that out like that. So that is our collision area. So this is the part of the Area2D that will detect overlap, okay? So we're going to add a few more things. We're going to add to the world another Area2D. And it's going to take a sprite as well. And there's recents over here. You don't have to type and search every time. Click on Area2D. We're going to add collision. Here it is right here in recent. I'm going to click on that. And this collision is also going to be a rectangle. And let's move. One thing we should probably do so we're not moving these things separately is click on Area2D. Let's rename this as well. Let's just call this house, right? And pretend it's a house. And then we're going to come up here and we're going to group these all together. So by clicking this group button here, all these will be grouped now. And then we're going to do the same thing with player. Click on player and group all those. Now, let's move these into the scene so we can play with them. I'm going to click on player, and I'm going to click this little move button here. And then I can move that into the scene. And I'm going to click the house and keep that move there. And we're going to move that into the scene. And what did we forget? Did we forget the image on the house? We did. Okay, so let's make sure we click on the sprite 2D, and let's name that house image. And let's drag this icon over here like we did before onto the texture. That gives us our house. And let's reshape this here. So let's go ahead and click on the arrow. That gives us our little nodes, or I guess you would call these points. And let's make this, let's just stretch this out. Okay. And let's adjust our collision shape now. And the collision, really, we only need to worry about the front half here, right? We want to collide, we want to pretend this is a doorway or something. So, oh, here we go. So let's see. Got to grab the right node. Okay. So this way, when we come in, we're entering this here. So that way, these two will detect and overlap with each other. And let's save this world. Command S will save, and just click save right there. Let's just save it to the root, the main folder over here. It doesn't really matter for now. And then we're going to have to click on Run Project, and it's going to ask us which scene would we like to have as the main scene. This will happen every time if you don't have a main scene. We're just going to click Current Scene, and it's going to run. Okay. Now we have no movement or nothing like that. We're going to add some simple movement. So let's add some simple movement. Let's come up to the world, and let's write a script. And this script is going to be a GD script, and we're just going to keep it default and create. Okay. So we're going to need some variables. We're going to make this player move. So to make the player move, we're going to need a var speed. And we're going to make that equal to 500. We're also going to need a variable, and we're going to need a direction. Okay. And the direction is going to be a vector 2, and we're going to give it 0, which just means 0, 0. Okay. It's at this vector. It basically starts at the here 0, 0. And in the process gets called every frame. So this is just your game loop. This is checking to see what happens in here every frame. So what we want to do is we want to move the character. So to do that, we want to do, what do we want to do? Let's say the position of the player. So to get the position of the player, we want to click on the player, drag that over, and now this is reference to the player. So we want to say player dot position plus equals direction times speed times delta. And I went over a lot of this already in some of my other videos, so you may need to go back and watch those if some of this isn't making sense. And to get the direction, because direction right now is just at 0, 0, so we want to get the direction of our keys, our key presses, our inputs. So I'm going to say direction is equal to input dot get vector, and you need to go left, right, up, and down. That is the order. And if you hold command and click on this, it should tell you that, I believe, somewhere in here. So here's your left, negative x. Positive x is right, so left, right. Y, negative, is up, and positive y is down. So you always have to put it in that order. Left, right, up, and down. And these come preloaded with Godot. So you can just say left, UI left, right, UI right, and what would we say, up, UI up, and down, UI down. All right, let's see if that's enough to get this player moving. So let's click play again. And I'm using, for now, we're not using AWSD. We're just going to use the arrow keys. We can program that later, but that's a separate video. Okay, so we're moving. But when we move over this, right, nothing happens. And we're going underneath it. So we want to change over here. We can shrink this and shrink this. And we want the player to be on top of the house, right? So it doesn't look so funny. So let's just click and drag underneath the house. Now don't drag over it. You want to see that little line under it. You want to drag under the house. let's replay and play our game. And now we're on top of the entry of the house. Okay, perfect. But you can see it's not doing anything. So let's do something really simple, and let's just connect a signal to this, so when we enter it, we get a little notification down here saying entered, okay? And that's just going to represent an action like play music or teleport, something like that. So on the house, come over here and click on node, and we want to do area entered and connect. Now, there's a few things over here. If you want to detect another Area2D object overlapping with it, you check what, like we did, because our player is an Area2D, you would check area entered. If you have a 2D character body, then you might want to check a body entered, right? Because then your character body is a 2D body. It's not an Area2D, it's a character body. So there's a few options over here. We're going to go with area entered 2D. And that basically gives us a function on house area entered. And so when we overlap those two objects now, it will basically trigger this function, and we can do whatever's inside this function. So if we just say print entered, okay, and run the scene, now we come over, and you see down here, we're getting some action. It's actually responding. So when every time we enter it, it says entered. And we also can add area exited. Double click that. Same thing, add a script, just connect. So now on house area exited, we can do something. Let's just print exited. Okay, let's run the scene. We go in, we're in the house, we trigger it, entered, we leave the house, we exit. We trigger the exit, okay? Perfect, we're getting somewhere. So, let's separate these out now, and I'll show you what happens. These two nodes can talk to each other because they're both in the world together. But if we separate these out, you're not going to see this interaction anymore, and I'll show you. As you see these here, down here, it's interacting. Watch what happens. Let's on house, let's right click, and let's say save branch as scene. We're going to separate this out to its own scene. Just click save. Now you can see the node is basically linked to another scene, and down here you see we have house. Double click that, and now we have a house scene. So this is now its own scene, separate. It's not a node inside of world anymore. It's a scene that we add to the world, okay? So let's go back to the world. I'm going to do the same thing with player. Let's right-click player, save branch as scene, and save. And now we're not going to have any movement, I don't think, because we've moved it to a separate scene. Oh, we still have movement. It moved all that logic over because... Let's see, let's go to world. Let's see what's going on here. Script. Oh, okay, so this player didn't change here, even though now this is no longer an Area2D node that's directly in world. It's still called player, and it's still a separate scene. So it's still, the logic still works. So that's good. All right. So what do we want to do? Let's go back. Let's show you when we enter. See that? Nothing happening. Nothing's happening anymore. Okay? So we have to make a custom signal. In order for these two now, as separate scenes in the world, we have to create a custom signal so that they can talk to each other. Super easy though. On the house, we want to add a script to the house. Keep all this default. And up top, we're just going to add our own custom signal. Okay, and we're going to call this, what do you want to call it? On enter? Let's see if we can do that. On enter, just like that. So now we have our own custom signal here. And to get this to trigger, we're going to go on house and node, and then we're going to do area entered, just like before. So when this area is entered, what are we going to do? We're going to emit our own signal. So we're going to say on enter dot emit. Okay, so basically when our player runs into this onEntered, we are going to emit our own signal. Let's click Command S to save. Let's go back to the world script. And in here, let's get rid of these two so don't get confused. We don't need those anymore. We can come over to our world and our house node. And when you come over to the nodes here, you'll see that on enter, right? So if we come to house, we made a custom signal called on enter that we're going to emit when we enter the area. So back in the world on house, you can now see our custom on enter. So let's double click that and connect it. And when we connect that on house entered, we can print entered. Okay, so let's see if this works. Let's run the scene and come over and boom, there you go, entered. So we are seeing that signal and triggering it once again. So to break this down one more time, on our house scene, we create our own custom signal and we call it on enter. All right, and then with the house selected, we choose what signal we want to use to detect the overlap, and that is on area entered. So any Area2D object that enters into this area will emit on enter. So going back to the world and going to our house node, you double click on the custom signal on enter, which gives us a function, and so now this is basically linked to this. So when we enter the house, this is what happens. Any code in here can be triggered. So let's add something else to really drive this home. Let's come to world. Let's see, what do we, let's make a pretend coin like we're going to pick it up. So let's do another scene. So come up to the plus. Let's go to other node, type in area. Let's rename this coin. Let's give it a sprite. 2D. Let's give it a collision shape. Let's drag our icon to the inspector. Let's drag our icon over to the texture and let's go to collision shape and make it a rectangle again. We can go to the 2D scene, zoom in on this thing. I'm going to rename this to coin image. I'm going to drag the coin. Let's see, what do we want? Collision shape. Okay, let's make this collision shape larger. Option and drag out the red dot so we have a good size collision shape again. And let's click Command Save to save this as the coin scene. And we'll come back to the world and let's add this coin scene by coming up here to the instantiate child scene here. So click this while world is selected, click this and then double click on coin. Okay, that'll add the coin. Now let's come back to the coin and make it smaller so that way we know the difference, okay, between everything. And I'm going to probably have to readjust a lot of things here, but let's do the coin image and let's make it real small here. Let's do that. And then let's click on the collision shape, adjust that as well. We can group these if we want. We can come over to the coin image under transform and we can give it a position of 0 and 0. That way we're here. Do the same thing with the collision shape. Come over to transform. Let's give it 0 and 0. And Command Save. Come over to the world. And let's drag this over here. Command S to save. So this is our coin. So currently, if we play the game, the coin does nothing. Okay. And I like the player to be on top of the coin, so I'm going to drag the player below the coin again. and play the scene so we can see the difference. There we go. Now we're on top of the coin. And so let's make this coin do something. So under coin, let's add a script. Again, all the defaults, click create. We're going to make a custom signal again, right? Because this scene cannot talk to this scene without a custom signal. So let's call this signal pickup, because we're going to pick up the coin. What we'll do is we'll run into the coin and then we'll make it disappear like we're picking it up. So here's our custom signal. We're going to come over to the node and we're going to say, for this coin, we're going to say if a area is entered. And we're going to connect that. And again, it gives us the function. And we're going to say emit. Nope, sorry. We're going to say pickup dot emit. And basically that is just sending out our signal. It's triggering our pickup signal so that way we can detect that in the world scene, okay? And that's all we need to do there. We could also say queue free. And basically what queue free does is it deletes the scene. So when we touch this, when we enter the area, we'll emit our custom signal to detect in the world, and then we'll delete the coin. So save that, come back to world, click on coin. You can see our pickup, so we want to double click that and connect it. And so here we're just going to say print coin was picked up. All right, so let's see if this does anything. Let's see if we got it right. So let's go up here and play our scene. And we'll come here and we'll enter the house and we get the correct response from there. And then we come over the coin and boom, we get coin was picked up and it disappears. Okay, so we've just interacted with that object by calling a custom signal, deleting it, and then responding with coin was picked up. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that's confusing to everyone. I'm not sure if I explained it very well. I hope I did. I expect a ton of questions in the comments. I'll try and do my best to answer them. If you want me to go over this again in another video or maybe a live session, I can do a live session. That might be pretty cool with everyone, and we can just go over this stuff together and play around. Let me know what you guys need for help, and I'll do my best to help. Let's make this a community. Let's all reach out and talk to each other and leave comments so that way we can get the basics down and we can move on. So that's it for this one. Please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you know when my next tutorial comes out. And for now, ciao.